Yo guys, what is up? It's Teach here, coming at you again with another video over on Ark Survival Ascended, and I wanted to show you all ranged weapons inside of Ark, their values, what they do, when they're useful, and the actual damage they do. Now this is going to be something that should, there's some new updates, by the way, some things that changed with Ark Survival Ascended, or at least it feels like they did. And yeah, that's what I'm going to go over in this video, and hopefully it helps you out a ton. If you don't mind, smash that like button, leave a comment below for the algorithm, and consider subbing to the channel. Getting super close to 100K, and that's been my dream. So anyways, there are a total, just so you can see right now, I've got a total of 4 bow type weapons, 1 slingshot, and then you have the 8 rifles in the game, or the actual weapons, the advanced weapons, if you want to think of it that way. So we're going to go ahead and start out the lowest damage weapon in the game, and that is your primitive slingshot. However, people don't realize the value of the primitive slingshot. I'm just going to toss it in my hotbar so you can see what I mean by that. The primitive slingshot actually deals a ridiculous amount of torpidity, and the ammunition type is just having stone. So if you were to go ahead and hit something, I'm going to go ahead and take all of this thing's armor off, right? Because there's no need. I'm going to show you what it looks like with armor off. If you were to hit something with this, it's going to do a very significant base damage, that 13. However, its torpidity is going to do 20 torpidity. A headshot will actually increase the torpidity of a slingshot, and at full pull, it doesn't necessarily matter. I want you to see that, so you can see it does have, so it's like half is where full pull is, and it's actually going to deal about 80 torpidity per hit. So like before you have a bow and the ability to use tranq arrows, this is one of the most effective weapons in the game. However, it's not very useful in all honesty, because it's very quick to unlock the actual primitive bow. The primitive bow immediately does more damage. You can see 54 to the body, and it does, if you actually pull it back further or shorter, just so you can see, it's about half pull and you get the maximum damage out of it. So the further you pull back on your bow, the more damage you are going to do overall. Just like every other weapon, it's also going to have a headshot increase. So if you hit something in the head at any pull here, you're going to have double damage. And you can see 164 damage versus that. I think it's technically triple damage. But you can see that right there, right? So it's got the increased headshot damage. So this is the worst of the bows. It is the earliest to access, and it is a good overall range. It's got nothing super special about it. It's just super easy to fire, and you can fire a whole bunch of shots off quickly. It's technically the quickest firing bow for actually applying torpidity to creatures. So if you were to sit, you can see that I can actually fire way more arrows than I could with a crossbow. And the torpidity arrows that you can use for this, it is actually much quicker to fire. So believe it or not, early game, the bow is the best thing that you can use in order to apply torpidity to a creature, because you can just fire 6, 7, 8 arrows to the one arrow that a crossbow would fire. Now, if I go into my inventory and make some more arrows, right, I have to go in and make some stone arrows. And then if I was to go into the crossbow, this is your next step up in the game. The crossbow does a significant more damage than the bow, almost double basically. You can see a headshot is about 100-ish more as well. It just slows, and the firing rate is about 4 or 5 times slower. If someone is good with the bow, they are very dangerous with the bow. However, the bow is much less accurate than the crossbow. Because I can hold this up, the distance that a arrow will travel with your crossbow is much further than it will travel with your generic bow. So this is the first big upgrade. It does that bonus damage. There is nothing special about armor reduction, armor damages, all that kind of stuff. It just allows you to have a more controlled arrow, so it's ready to go as you need it. Now, the next bow that you can get much later in the game is the primitive compound bow. Now, the compound bow is the first specialized weapon in the entire game. You can see that it looks like a compound bow in real life, and it does fire metal arrows or any arrow. However, firing metal arrows does exponentially more damage than firing a regular arrow with this, and there's no value to firing a regular arrow with this, because it does more damage with the regular bow with the regular arrow, whereas this one has the special ability to use the metal arrow. So, as you can see, 174 damage is quite a bit more. Now, there is a special perk to this one. If I hit somebody in the head, you can see there's 524 arrow. Now, the one benefit with this is this one actually bypasses armor. So even if someone's wearing some good, you can see it right here, right? Riot armor. He's going to take a slight reduction, but my arrow is going to bypass his armor and do that bonus damage. To show you a comparison, let's pull out a crossbow so you can see 210 damage to the head. This does 17. So it does 40x damage in comparison to just a generic crossbow right off the bat. Not a bad difference. Now, the damage numbers up front aren't that impressive, but the fact that it can bypass armor and saddle armor is why the compound bow is a very late game popular weapon that people use. It is incredibly useful to use, and getting good with one of these, especially with how they have fixed the actual arrow flow and like the third person issue, you can use a combo very effectively. Getting good with one of these is one of the most valuable things in the game to be able to use. Now, we've essentially moved out of the bows into our launchers / pistol zone. The next thing that you can do that can increase torpidity is you can actually fire a harpoon bolt with the harpoon gun on land. Now, it doesn't go very far, and it does a small chunk of damage. However, you can fire these using a actual, and I'm just going to show you why the reduction actually is important. So if I'm aiming at the head here, notice how it hits almost the bottom of this thing. So it's not a very big range. So up close, the harpoon launcher can be very effective, and it's mostly just useful because you can fire the harpoon, which does a lot more torpidity. So if you have a good harpoon launcher and a harpoon torp dart, this is one of the most effective knockout tools in the entire game. You use much less than anything else, and it's better than a crossbow in general. But the real use for this guy is it's usable under the water, and you can actually hit things much easier under the water because the arrows fly effectively under the water, whereas you wouldn't be able to fire some things under the water. You saw that that one basically traveled to its target. I don't see anything else under there, but that's the use of the harpoon launcher. Basically useful for taming your larger things like your mosasaurs, things along those lines. But now we get into the actual damage dealing guns in the game. There's only a few special differences that have changed from ASE. It's mostly just the hit registering and stuff like that. But this is your simple pistol, doing 99 and then 299. So you're actually better off firing some of the bows. But because this is a line of sight thing, you can hit technically anything inside of a line of sight. So anything with this, there's no travel time. The crossbow isn't nearly as good as that because you have to actually predict where something's going to be. So once you actually enter the gun age, this is way better to shoot. And believe it or not, you can shoot it pretty quickly, obviously, and really accurately. 99 damage a shot is not terrible, but it will not do super well against someone with like riot on because you're going to do way less damage to somebody. There's 3, 6. You can see that one right there, 7, 7. So not a great gun, but it's a good starter weapon. It's enough to get you off your feet. Then once you get past the simple pistol, you're going to start moving into the Longneck. The Longneck is your first damage dealing weapon in the game. And one shot wise, this is one of the more damaging weapons in the game. You can see 279 to the chest, and then to the head, you have an 839 headshot. This is a 100%, nothing special about it. You can get 3 to 4 times the damage of this just by getting an ascendant level, which caps out at what, 298 I think on official servers. So you can literally multiply that by 3, 2600 damage to the head, and you're going to be basically chunking just about anything. 3 times that damage too, you'll be doing a lot of damage to people with a long neck. So it's very useful. They are instant hit, and they do have a big, that headshot multiplier is much easier to hit because you can place, this is the first weapon where you can really actually, what the heck? You can place attachments on, including silencers, and shoot torp darts out of. So this is the first time where you can actually use that usefully. So now the next thing that we're going to talk about is your shotguns. This technically is the highest damage shotgun in the game. This was increased from ASA, or from ASE to ASA, because as long as you're within like 3 feet of something, this thing is absolutely devastating. Now, this is a 100% no bonus. If I shoot something in the head, by the way, and use both of its shots on a primitive, that's 4,000 damage. So for things like the dragon, when you're directly underneath it, you can see that that's a ridiculous amount of damage for a primitive shotgun. Not too bad. It technically does more damage than the pump shotgun, but it only has 2 clips, and it has to be insanely quick, close range to fire it, because if you are far away at all, you will get maybe 1 to 2 hit markers. You can see that I'm actually hitting that over there. So all of the bullets are almost non-effective at range. So as long as you're inside literally 3 feet, this is the most damaging weapon that I have found in the game, and incredibly useful. If you get picked or something like that, it's probably one of the best things. Having a 300%, you can see 6,000 damage if I was to triple that. Big difference maker. However, most people prefer this weapon. This is the pump shotgun, which is one of the most popular endgame weapons in the game due to the fact that it is also a shotgun, but its increased accuracy at distance allows people to do more damage. However, it still does have a massive spray at close range, so you can see my individual shots doing 607, and if I aim at the head, it's going to do quite a bit more at 1,931. But the reason that people prefer this to the other shotgun is that one doesn't hit anything at this range. This one can technically hit something at this range. It's not every single shot, but as long as you're kind of putting that reticle pretty close, you are going to do damage numbers to something. This is a very popular weapon for boss fights, as well as just generic endgame things when you get picked to look up with this because it's much more accurate. However, it's good to have a combination of weapons, and I would highly encourage you to have one of each because this is much better for boss fights, whereas that one's much better at close range, just do a crap ton of damage. Now, the next thing that we need to worry on is actually moving into the damage numbers of the more extreme weapons in the game, and those extreme weapons include I guess we're going to get into the fabricated weapons, right? So these are the ones that are going to be a lot more dangerous. So this is your generic pistol. It does 49 a shot, and then to the head it does 150. It's actually a heavily underused weapon because it carries 13 shots in the clip, and it has almost zero kickback to it. It's very, very dangerous to use. Now, you can get some really good ones of these out of drops. However, there are much better guns in just about every category in the game. So honestly, it's probably one of the most useless weapons in the entire game because when you do use it, there's nothing. I mean, the Longneck does better range and can knock things out. The simple pistol is cheaper to make and easier to use. This one's basically just a waste of space. I wish there was some sort of special something to it, but unfortunately, there's just not. And realistically, the reason why is because this guy. The assault rifle is something that is incredibly useful, and it is very fun to use. You can actually zoom in with it. You can add attachments to it. Outside of its massive kick, it's one of the highest DPS things in the entire game because you can hold the trigger, and actually, as long as you're holding this on something, if you were to fire at somebody, you can technically, with a primitive one of these, do 10,000 damage a minute. Now, that's assuming you don't hit in the head, too, because it also does the damage multiplier for headshots. This will be very useful, but again, it's an early game thing. Some people claim these are fantastic for PvP use because it's hard to miss the larger tames with one of these, but I still think you're going to get more damage per second out of a shotgun or our next thing. So the assault rifle, though it is cool, it's not all that effective because the amount of kick makes it almost unusable. Now, this is the first thing that we're going to actually focus on, right? This is the fabricated sniper rifle, one of the best, if not the best PvP weapon in the entire game. Reason being, it has an 8-round clip. You can zoom in with it, just like you see here, and you can add attachments like the silencer as well, or the flashlight if you really wanted to. Now, up close, it doesn't change the damage. There's no damage drop off, so it does 164 primitive damage per shot. However, people really like the fact that you can kind of fire a whole bunch of shots right off the bat. So you can see there's 164, but the accuracy of it allows people to ping headshots much easier on tames and actually aim to specific soft points a lot better. The reason that this is considered so much better is because if I was to aim, let's say at a Pelagornis right here, right, I can hit the head of that much easier than I could, and at range actually accurately hit something. And maybe I can, maybe I can't. I don't know why this guy is so high level. I'm actually kind of impressed now. But you can see that my range, due to the added on scope, makes this thing a much more dangerous weapon. I think he's out of render range, technically. Yeah, he's out of render range. But this is the most effective PvP weapon in the entire game due to that fact right there, because you can zoom in, and if someone's raiding you and they have something like a Triceratops, you can aim past it and aim to a specific part of the body that takes more damage and does not have that damage reduction. So I mean, by far, not really even particularly close, the best PvP weapon in the game. Not for necessarily raiding, but for raid defenses and trying to play counterplay. It is easily my favorite weapon, and some people swear to it that this is the only weapon they'll use, even at close range, because it is still accurate inside of this like little crosshair. You will hit wherever the crosshair goes. So some people still use this preferred over a shotgun because you can kind of just look up and pull the trigger, and those 8 shots do a significant amount of damage to pretty much anything inside of the game. But The last thing on our list is supposed to be the king. However, it's not really the best. This is the tech rifle. If you've never seen the tech rifle, it is a very effective weapon. However, it's got a couple of basic things that kind of prevent it from being super useful. Its ammo type is element. Element is incredibly difficult to get early game, and you have to be an end game tribe to get it, especially in maps that don't have gotchas and stuff like that, because you actually have to do a boss fight in order to get it. And it uses up element at really fast. Give or take, you've got about 50 shots per clip, per amount of element, and that's not a whole heck of a lot. However, at close range, you can see it does an insane amount of damage, 539, and then a headshot damage multiplier at 600 or a 1600, right? Now, the only negative of that right there, you can see that you can do a stupid amount of damage. Again, that's kind of hard to hit, by the way, because there is a travel time to these bullets. It takes a little bit of time to actually register. The other ones are instant fire, whereas this one you have to actually kind of get lucky and know where something's going to be stuck in order to hit it. So those tech rifles are very effective at that range. But again, with the travel time, it's a little more difficult to hit it when people are moving and like the actual stuff is going on. Now, yes, it does deal the most damage, and you can see it's not particularly close. If I was to hold this down, you'll notice that the actual damage numbers are going to increase, and you can just get a crazy amount. But you see that little red meter? It's going to overheat if you hold it for too long, so you've kind of got to like throttle it. Now, also the benefit of a tech rifle is you can, at close range, or any range realistically, within 14-ish tiles, you can hit something within 14 tiles, and then it's the maximum range that you can actually fire one of these things. I'm gonna go a little bit further away and show you what I mean by that. So you basically can't cheese your way into actually hitting something. So I'm still able to hit it here. It should be right around here that it's cutting off. Maybe. Can't quite tell. Yep, there we are. We hit the actual cutoff range. So notice how about this far away, you can't actually hit something. So there is a range in which it no longer does damage. You've got like an area of effect, if you want to think of it that way, in order to actually use the tech rifle. But it does do a substantial amount of damage to foundations as well in any structure. It does about 100, so a lot of people will raid just by holding the trigger on one of these things and actually get an insane amount of damage. So yeah, hopefully this video helps you out. But that's every weapon in the game explained, what they do, how to use them, in what situations they're powerful, and what they are kind of superseded by in the grand scheme of things. But hopefully this video helps you out. And other than that, teach.